All right, let's do this. Graham Hancock, Ancient Mysteries, Lost Civilizations. Ready to dive in.
Let's go. Always up for a good mystery.
So where do we even start with a guy like Hancock? I mean, there are like a zillion books, articles, podcasts. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, he's been busy. But I guess the best place to start is with his background, right? I mean, he wasn't always this, like, Indiana Jones of ancient history.
Right. You'd think he'd be some archaeologist, right? Like straight out of a movie with the hat and the whip and everything.
Yeah, but nope. He was actually a journalist, like a serious journalist. Worked for some big-time publications.
Seriously? Like what?
The Economist, The Times. Covering some pretty heavy stuff, too. Famines, political crises, you know, the real deal.
Wow. So not exactly ancient aliens and lost pyramids.
Not at first, no. But then something changed. He just kind of shifted gears.
Yeah, like a total 180.
Wow.
What do you think sparked that?
Well, somewhere along the line, he got hooked on these ancient mysteries. Started seeing connections that other people weren't seeing.
Connections? Like what? Give me an example.
We'll take his breakout book, Fingerprints of the Gods. That's where he really lays out his central idea.
The lost civilization thing.
Exactly. He thinks there was this advanced civilization way back during the last ice age.
The Ice Age?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Most people probably think of that period as like cavemen and mammoths.
Right. And that's what makes Hancock so controversial. He's basically saying, nope, there was something else going on, something big.
Okay, but is there any evidence to back that up?
Right.
Or is it just like speculation?
He presents a ton of evidence in Fingerprints of the Gods. He looks at ancient monuments, myths, astronomical alignments, the whole 9 yards.
Like what kind of monuments?
Well, the pyramids, for example.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with the pyramids.
I mean, they're pretty impressive, I'll give him that.
Right. And he argues that the level of mathematical and astronomical knowledge needed to build those things is, well, it's beyond what we typically attribute to the ancient Egyptians.
So he's saying, like, they got help from someone more advanced.
Yeah, that's his theory. He thinks the knowledge was inherited, passed down from this earlier Ice Age civilization.
Okay, so pyramids, anything else?
Oh, yeah, tons of stuff. He talks about the Sphinx, too, you know, that big lion thing in Egypt.
Yeah, vaguely.
Well, he points out that there's evidence of water erosion on the Sphinx. And not just any water erosion, but erosion that could only have been caused by heavy rainfall over a long period of time.
But isn't Egypt like a desert?
Exactly. It hasn't seen that kind of rainfall in thousands of years. So Hancock's argument is that the Sphinx must be much older than we think, like Ice Age old.
Okay, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But he can't just base a whole theory on a few eroded statues, right?
Oh, he doesn't stop there. He delves into mythology, too. He points out that cultures all over the world have these myths about a great flood.
Oh, yeah, the flood myths. Those are everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I always figured that was just a coincidence.
Hancock doesn't think so. He sees those myths as echoes of a real event, the destruction of this Ice Age civilization, possibly by a massive flood caused by melting glaciers at the end of the Ice Age.
Wow, so he's basically saying all those ancient cultures were trying to tell us something.
That's his take on it, yeah. He thinks they were trying to preserve the memory of this lost civilization.
It's a pretty wild idea, I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But is it all just speculation? Or is there any actual scientific evidence to support any of this?
That's where things get tricky. A lot of mainstream archaeologists and scientists, they're not buying it. They say the erosion on the Sphinx could be explained by wind and sand, not necessarily water, and they question his dating methods, saying they're not reliable.
So it's kind of a battle between Hancock and the establishment.
You could say that, but even if you don't agree with him, his work is definitely thought-provoking. He forces you to look at the past with fresh eyes. And that's never a bad thing. He really does challenge the way we think about history, doesn't he?
Totally. And it's not just about ancient Egypt either, right? He goes global with this stuff, like in Magicians of the Gods, where he dives into this event called the Younger Dryas. Ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah, the Younger Dryas. It's like this big what-if scenario for the planet. Imagine things are finally warming up after the last ice age, right? Ice is melting, plants are growing, everything's going great, and then, bam, instant Ice Age 2.0.
That sounds rough.
It was. Megafauna extinctions, sea levels going haywire. It messed everything up.
Yeah.
And Hancock thinks this wasn't just some random climate hiccup either.
What do you think caused it? Aliens.
Not quite. Comets. Or at least a comet impact. And get this, he thinks this might be what finally finished off his lost Ice Age civilization.
So a comet wiped out Atlantis, basically? Is that what we're saying here?
Not Atlantis exactly, but yeah, the idea is a massive impact event caused all sorts of chaos, and that lines up with some of those flood myths he talks about in Fingerprints of the Gods.
Okay, so he's connecting a comet impact to ancient myths. That's a pretty big leap, right?
It is, but he's got some interesting evidence to back it up. For one thing, there are these nanodiamonds and melt glass found at various sites around the world that date back to the Younger Dryas.
Nanodiamonds and melt glass, what are those? Like space stuff.
Basically, they're often found at impact sites. Think like meteor craters. So Hancock's saying this isn't just a coincidence. These things point to a massive impact event happening right around the time things went south for his theoretical Ice Age civilization.
Okay, but how does he know that impact specifically wiped out a civilization? Couldn't it have just been bad weather or something?
Well, he argues that an event like that would have had devastating consequences for any civilization, right? Think about it. Sudden climate change, crops failing, widespread famine, not to mention the impact itself causing tsunamis and who knows what else.
Yeah, that's going to leave a mark. But didn't some scientists push back on that whole Younger Dryas impact theory?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of debate about it. Some researchers say the evidence for an impact isn't strong enough. They think the nanodiamonds and melt glass could have come from volcanic eruptions or something like that.
So it's still up in the air, like a big scientific mystery.
Pretty much. But even if the impact theory turns out to be wrong, Hancock's exploration of the Younger Dryas is still super fascinating. It makes you think about how fragile civilizations can be, even advanced ones.
Totally. It's like a reminder that we're not invincible, you know? Okay, so we've got ancient Egypt, the Younger Dryas. What else does Hancock get into?
Oh, he doesn't stop there. He's got a whole book about the Americas, America Before. It's all about challenging the traditional view of how and when humans first arrived here.
You mean the Clovis first theory?
Exactly. For a long time, archaeologists thought that the Clovis people were the first to arrive in the Americas around 13,000 years ago. But Hancock's saying, hold up, not so fast.
What's he proposing instead?
He thinks humans were here way before Clovis, like thousands of years earlier. And he's got some pretty compelling evidence to back it up.
Such as?
There are sites like Monteverde in Chile, for example. It's been dated to around 18,500 years ago. And there's Cactus Hill in Virginia, which is around 15,000 years old. Both of those predate Clovis by a significant margin.
Okay, so if they weren't Clovis, who were these early Americans? And where did they come from?
That's the million-dollar question. Hancock suggests they might have come from Southeast Asia or Australia, traveling by boat across the Pacific.
Australia. Seriously. That seems like a long way to go in a boat.
It is. But there's some genetic evidence to support this theory. Hancock points out that there's this unique Australasian genetic signal found in certain Amazonian tribes.
So like DNA linking Amazonian people to Australia.
Exactly. And it's distinct from the genetic markers associated with the people who crossed the Bering Land Bridge. So it suggests a completely different migration pattern.
Okay, so we've got these potential pre-Clovis cultures, maybe even with ties to Australia. That's pretty mind-blowing. But doesn't the Bering Land Bridge thing make more sense? Like walking across is easier than sailing, right?
Yeah, but the Bering Land Bridge wasn't always open. There were periods when it was blocked by glaciers, so a coastal route would have been the only option during those times.
I never thought about that. So these early Americans were like master navigators, sailing across the Pacific thousands of years ago.
That's what Hancock's suggesting, yeah. He thinks we've underestimated the capabilities of these ancient people. And that's kind of a recurring theme in his work, right? Challenging the status quo, pushing us to rethink what we thought we knew.
This definitely makes you think. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Hancock doesn't just write books, does he? He's also been on tons of podcasts debating these ideas with anyone who will listen.
Oh, yeah, he's a podcast superstar. Especially on the Joe Rogan Experience. Those episodes get millions of downloads.
I bet. Those are always good. They get into some deep stuff. Especially when Randall Carlson's there.
Oh, yeah. The episodes with Carlson are epic. They have this great dynamic, bouncing ideas off each other. You can tell they're both really passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, and Carlson's a geologist, right? So he brings a whole other level of expertise to the conversation.
Exactly. Like in episode 1772, where they talk about the Younger Dryas impact theory. Carlson explains all the geological evidence, how floods of that magnitude could actually happen, the kind of evidence they'd leave behind. It's fascinating.
And they tie it back to Hancock's ideas about a lost civilization, right?
Hmm?
Like maybe the Clovis people were descendants of this older culture and the Younger Dryas wiped them out.
That's one of their theories, yeah. And they talk about how those nanodiamonds at the impact sites are like a smoking gun pointing to a major event that could have reshaped human history. It's pretty compelling stuff.
And then there's that episode with Brian Murarescu, right? The one where they talk about psychedelics and ancient rituals.
Mm.
That was a wild ride.
Oh, yeah. Episode 1897. That one's a classic. Murarescu's book, The Immortality Key, is all about how psychedelics might have played a role in shaping early religions. It's a really fascinating perspective.
Yeah, they talk about shamanism, altered states of consciousness, how these ancient cultures might have had a completely different understanding of reality than we do.
It's like they're saying that maybe we've lost touch with something important, some ancient wisdom that could help us understand our place in the universe.
Deep stuff.
Mm.
But it's not all just friendly chats on podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Hancock's been in some pretty heated debates, too.
Oh, yeah. He's not afraid to go head-to-head with the skeptics, like that one with Michael Shermer on Joe Rogan.
That was a good one. Shermer's a tough cookie. He doesn't give Hancock an inch.
Nope. He challenges him on everything. The age of the Sphinx, the Younger Dryas impact, you name it. It's a classic example of the battle between mainstream science and alternative theories.
And then there's Flint Dibble, the archaeologist who specializes in the peopling of the Americas. They had a pretty intense exchange on Rogan, too.
Oh, yeah, that one got pretty heated. Dibble's very critical of Hancock's pre-Clovis theories. They clash over the interpretation of archaeological sites, the dating of artifacts, the whole 9 yards.
And Hancock doesn't back down, does he? He even made a whole video fact-checking Dibble's claims after the debate.
Exactly. He's definitely committed to defending his ideas, even when they're unpopular. Which I respect, you know?
Totally. It shows he's not just in it for the fame or the book sales. He actually believes this stuff.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense. It's like you can feel the tension through your headphones.
I know, right? You're just like waiting for someone to drop the mic.
And it's not just about winning the argument either. It's about these bigger questions, you know, like how do we interpret the past? What stories are we telling ourselves?
Right. It's about challenging those narratives that we've always taken for granted. And that's what I think Hancock does so well. He makes you think, even if you don't agree with him on everything.
Totally. He's a great storyteller, you know. He weaves together science and mythology and personal experience in a way that just pulls you in.
Like, he doesn't just tell you what to think. He invites you to come along on this journey with him, to explore these mysteries for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what makes his work so appealing to so many people. It's not just about facts and figures. It's about adventure and the thrill of discovery.
Totally. And, you know, speaking of adventure, there's this other Joe Rogan episode, number 142, where Hancock talks about his experiences with ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic. He gets really deep into the whole idea of cognitive liberty.
Right. He's like, adults should have the right to explore their own consciousness without the government telling them what they can and can't do.
And he doesn't just talk about it in theory either. He shares his own personal experiences with ayahuasca, how it helped him confront his own inner demons, break free from negative patterns. It's pretty powerful stuff.
And he even says that ayahuasca inspired the storyline for his novel Entangled, which is about these two women, one living in the Stone Age and one in modern times, who are connected through consciousness.
Right. It's like he's saying that consciousness is this timeless, universal thing that transcends space and time.
Deep stuff. But okay, back to ancient mysteries. There's another Joe Rogan episode, number 2051, where Hancock talks about Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, Göbekli Tepe. That place is incredible, right? Like, it's the oldest known monumental structure in the world. It dates back to, like, 11,600 years ago.
Which is crazy because that's before agriculture, before settled societies, before everything we thought we knew about civilization.
Right. It completely throws a wrench in the traditional timeline. And Hancock sees it as potential evidence for his lost civilization theory.
Like, maybe Göbekli Tepe was built by the survivors of that lost civilization as a way to preserve their knowledge and pass it on to future generations.
That's one possibility, yeah. Or maybe it represents a transfer of technology from a more advanced culture. It's a mystery.
And that's what I love about all this stuff. It's just so much fun to speculate, to explore these different possibilities, to imagine what might have been.
Totally. It's like we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of our own history. Who knows what other secrets are out there waiting to be discovered?
And that's the beauty of it, right? The mystery never ends.
Exactly. And that's what keeps us coming back for more.
Well said. So there you have it, folks, our deep dive into the world of Graham Hancock, a journalist turned ancient mystery explorer, challenging the status quo, pushing the boundaries of what we thought we knew about the past.
He takes us on a wild ride through ancient Egypt, lost civilizations, comet impacts, and even psychedelics.
It's a journey that's both fascinating and thought-provoking, whether you agree with him or not. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Asking questions, exploring new ideas, and expanding our understanding of ourselves and the universe we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So go out there, do your own research, explore these mysteries for yourselves. Who knows what amazing discoveries you might make. Until next time, keep on digging.